Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments, where tonight we're going to take a look at some short coding activities that you can use with your students. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI Technology to make those tough to teach, tough to learn concepts accessible to all my students. Tonight we're luckily joined by our two panelists, Michelle Bonds and Brenda Lynch. Michelle was an engineer for 6 years before she decided teaching was where she needed to be. She taught 7th through 12th grade math for 10 years, East, which was a STEM course, for 7 years, and computer science for 5 years. Michelle also supported the engineering club that won the 1080 STEM National Championship in 2011. She's been providing professional development since 2008 and loves sharing what she has learned. Michelle is married and has one daughter and son-in-law and 2 granddaughters. Michelle, thanks for joining us tonight.
For having me.
And Brenda has served the education community for the last 4 years as a classroom teacher, math coach, and instructional specialist. She will soon join Sam Houston State University as an adjunct professor. She has been a TQ regional instructor for the last 10 years. Brenda, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here.
We're expecting a large crowd, so your audio is muted. Feel free at any time to send any questions to Brenda or Michelle using the Q&A window on the right side of your screen. We'll also be using the chat window to send general messages. As a reminder, the session will be recorded, and we'll provide a link to the event certificate of attendance at the conclusion of the webinar. We hope you don't have any audio issues, but in the event that you do, try selecting Communicate from the very top of the WebEx menu and choose Audio Broadcast. At this point, Michelle is going to discuss our agenda.
Hello, everyone. So tonight it's going to be pretty simple. We've already started our welcome and introductions. First, we're going to actually show you that TI Code's website and, of course, everything that originates from education.ti.com. Then we're going to go into the 84 simple activities for those teachers that use a TI-84. And then we're also going to show you what the coding looks like on the TI-Nspire. And we'll always try to save time at the end for some extra Q&A in case we miss any questions in the chat.
Michelle, thanks so much. And Brenda is going to discuss our expected outcomes.
By the end of the evening, you guys will be able to use the TI Basic programming language to create and run simple programs. We'll be doing a couple of those with you together. We'll build understanding of the math concepts, programming logic, and coding skills, and we'll integrate prepared skill builder activities. And we're going to talk about how those fit in the class and how you can implement them throughout your curriculum.
Brenda, thanks so much. Michelle, I just gave you control. Feel free to share your screen.
All right. Thanks so much, Mike. Okay, so we are going to start out tonight with just the basic how do you get there. So on education.ti.com, that's the website you need to remember. All things TI education is going to be found here. Tonight we're talking about coding, but there are several other activities that are free. Everything on this website, as far as activities go and downloads for your calculator, they're all free. So this is a wonderful website to look at even if you're not looking at coding. So tonight we're going to go to the Activities tab that will be at the top of the screen, and then we're going to go to TI Codes. From there, you're going to see the basic thing. You're going to see our new Python option, and tonight we're basically going to be working on TI Basic, which is a coding language. From there, you choose which of your devices you have. And as I said, we're going to first do the TI-84. So let's move on over to our 84 handheld. So as you can see on my screen, I have my Smart View over to the right. And I have over here to the left is the actual website. So this is where we come to. I am going to choose TI-84 Plus, which will take you to the TI Codes 84 Plus homepage. This offers you the 10 minutes of code for the 84, the 10 minutes of code for the TI Innovator, which is also a tool that can be used with this handheld. Also beyond the basics, so if you get really good at coding, or if you have students that just want to branch out, this is all that they can see on the website. They have all of these options for them. You also have a teacher's lounge. So in this teacher's lounge, you can also see several different items and resources that teachers can use when they're using the 10 minutes of code. Now, it says 10 minutes of code for a reason, and that's why we're on here for tonight. These are quick activities. These are not whole class time activities. They're really short. I use them as bell ringers every single day in my math class. So let's get started. We're going to start right here. As you can see, there are going to be 5 units, and then there's some actual projects that the students can participate in. We're just going to look at Unit 1, kind of see how it's laid out, and actually try some programs. So if you have your TI-84 Plus handy, then feel free to grab that as we work through some of these programs. You can also see there is a download option for the teacher-student docs. You can do that in Word. So if you're actually in a physical classroom and you don't have computers, which I know in today every student's probably going to have some type of device, but if you do not, you can print this out in paper form for the students. But of course, this is online. We're in the time of everybody is using computers. Sometimes the students are even at home. So we definitely can use this wherever we are. So let's just take a look at Unit 1. This is the first level of the actual programming. It gives you an overview of the language and what it's going to do. It also gives you some objectives. If you have lesson plans and you need to throw some objectives in here, this is actually on here for you. You don't have to recreate them. And then you simply click Step 1 to get started. As you can see, these actual instructions are what I like to call kid-proof. I've had students and they always ask the question, I don't know what to do next. Well, with this right here, all I have to say is, well, read for me and tell me where you go wrong. If they read this out loud, they usually figure it out. So let's take a look at these instructions. It says, turn on your TI-84 Plus CE and press the program key. Well, I don't know about you guys, but that is pretty straightforward. So if I go over here and press the on key, and then I go find the program key, which is located right here. As you can see on my screen, it will highlight in red. And also over here to the right. So if anybody gets lost, you will see my little key presses. And feel free in the chat to let us know if I'm going too fast, and we will try to slow down. I'll be glad to. Just let me know. So next we're going to select new using the arrow key. So on the 84, since it is not like a touch screen or anything, you actually use these little arrow keys to move around the menus. And then as you can see, there's submenus that pop up underneath the titles. And this is the new. It says select new using the arrow keys, and then select create new by pressing enter. So I used my arrow key twice, and then I'm going to press enter. Simple, right? This is so straightforward, guys. I'm telling you. I did not give my kids much instructions at all. I took it in the classroom and said, hey, look at this new website, and I let them go and waited for them to ask questions. And I did not have one student ask questions on the first few pages. It took a while before they even asked the first question. So next, it says to name your program, and then it tells you how. And also, if you notice over here, you will see that it has a little picture that kind of shows what the finished product should look like. Now, be aware there are some students that don't like to read. I know none of your students are probably like that, but my students hated to read, so they would try to match the little picture without reading the instructions, and inevitably they would mess something up. This teaches them that they need to learn to pay attention to detail and to read instructions, which is a really good skill that all students need to know. So if you notice when it says the program, it says our program name will be Hello XY. And it also explains what you can do to name it. It says it can be any legal name, and then it tells you to press enter after typing the name, and it refers you down to this right here that talks about how to name. It must be up to 8 characters long, start with a letter, include only uppercase letters and numbers with no spaces. So it's given the information you need to run the calculator for the students. You're not having to actually take a class to explain how the calculator works before you use these. The students can immediately use these. So let's type in the Hello XY. If you look over here, the A is already flashing. That tells you your alpha is already on. Your letters are in green above the rows. They are in alphabetical order because testing requires alphabetical order, can't have a QWERTY keyboard. So these are in alphabetical order. So we go down to find, here's the H, and it works. Here's the E, and here's the L, and then we have an O, and then we have the X and the Y. So let's say some student knows that there should be the alpha on and they don't see the little A, and so they turn the alpha off accidentally. It's real easy to turn it back on. By doing the second alpha, you can get the alpha lock on, and so it turns it back on. So that is one way to help you out in case one of your students going, oh, it's giving me numbers, what happened to my letters? You just turn the alpha lock back on. So after we finish, it says press enter after typing the name. So we press enter. Looky there. You are now in Program Editor. Each line begins with a colon character. So I'm telling you folks, so easy. Selecting a programming command from the program menu. So that's telling you what you're going to do, and then the paragraph is going to explain it. So now the program key contains a new menu. So if we go back to the program key, boom, look what pops up. Now, if you want to use the command, you have to select it rather than type it. And this is really important because students will try this, so this the first thing you might ask and say, did you type or did you get it from the menu? Because they figure out, hey, I can just type the word it. But if you type it, it probably is not going to work. You must select it from the menu, and that tells them this in the instructions. So if you want to use the command, you must select it from the menu. Step 4, press the program key. We've already done that, but you can press it again. It's just fine. Choose the I/O menu. This menu contains all of the commands. So notice how it's telling you kind of as you go along, it's explaining these different menus. Now this is going to come in handy because at the end, if you notice there is this application, the students are going to have an application where they create their own code, and they're going to need to know everything that they've learned. Of course, they can always go back and look at it, but this explains as it goes along. So as a teacher, you're not constantly trying to teach the calculator. It's already in the instructions for the student. So we're going to select display. Down, hit enter, and it pops up on the home screen. And then we simply go to step 5. This greeting is called a string. Wonderful. So we are learning some coding terminology in with learning all of the actual coding itself. This is so, what I like to think, it's just so strong with the students of how these instructions are kind of work together. So it's not, okay, we're going to give you 5 pages to read and then you're going to do something. So it's like one little sentence that's teaching, and then they're going to actually do something. And with students, when you have that kinetic mixed with the reading, when you have it mixed together, it helps to set in their mind. Plus, they don't get bored with all the reading. So I love how this is formatted out, and all of these units are formatted in this exact same way. So it does tell you that you have to have quotation marks in your string, otherwise it will not print out completely. And so it also says to make your life easier by pressing second alpha to turn on the alpha lock, which I said about that before. It also tells you here again. So now our program is complete. So let me go back and I will actually type in this "You Are So Cool" so y'all can kind of see where everything is. So when we do our second alpha, your quotation marks are down here on the plus sign. And then we're going to type "You Are So Cool." So here we go. There's the U. Your space bar is going to be down here above the 0. This little bitty thing like this in green is your space bar. So that's how we space over. And then you have an R, and then space, and then we're going to do an S, and then we're going to do the O, space, and C. And if you're working on your calculators at home, feel free to put whatever you would like to put. I know some teachers by now, they're probably saying, I'm sick of typing this stuff, the heck with it. And that's fine. You can type, you can just put "You Are" if you want, just so you see what happens when the program runs. It's perfectly okay. So now we have a basic program, and we're going to run it to see how it all works. And let's look and make sure, yep, everything's good there. And so now we're going to actually run the program. So this is how we run the program. So we want to go back to home before we start running the program. So when you do this, you can actually do quit, which is second mode, and it takes you back to the home screen. And then when we press our program key, look, it brings this menu back. So if you press the program key and you're not seeing what you want to see, then you may still be in the editor instead of the regular calculator. So now underneath the execute menu, you actually see this new program you created, and all we have to do is hit enter to make it run. And then when you press enter again, voila, you see what you have typed on the screen. So this is just a basic exercise to help students kind of know how coding works. And why would we even want to consider coding besides just a fun little thing for the kids? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, coding helps a whole lot with reasoning. And I don't know about your students, but my students had tons of trouble with reasoning. I taught geometry mainly for several years with just a little bit of algebra and calculus. And reasoning was so low that, I mean, if it wasn't just an algorithm that they've memorized, then, I mean, they couldn't do it. And with coding, it allows them to look at those algorithms, even create some of the algorithms, understand the algorithms, even for the simple stuff. Another thing is that students can pay attention to detail. It is so important. I know my kids, when they first started doing it, they didn't want to read, but you can't get past too many steps without reading what's going on, and they have to go back and try again. So that is a key thing that our students need to learn in math classes and all classes probably. Definitely is going to help out there. So once we're finished, it tells you can go back and actually edit the program if you choose to, so they can add stuff to it. You can add another line to it. So, and this is the end of the first skill builder. So I know I took probably about 15 minutes to do this because I was trying to explain as I go along. However, when you're actually working on it yourself and your student, it's only going to take them about 10 minutes. And as the students get used to the calculator, it's going to take them a whole lot less than 10 minutes to do this. So it's like a perfect bell ringer or a perfect little fun way just to get the kids' minds engaged. But no worries, because there is actually math built in. You cannot have computer science without math. But let's move on to Skill Builder 2. So in this one, we're going to add and edit the program, and we're going to look at the select and paste commands in the program. And then it also talks about using the simple editing features to insert and delete things. So when we look at this, and it's telling you to go back to the program that we've already done, so it starts again. Notice how Skill Builder 2 starts again with turn on your calculator. So it's one of those things that it's constantly telling the kids step by step. So Skill Builder 1, usually you would do that on one day. Skill Builder 2, you would do that on another day. Now, I have had students that will fly through and get to Skill Builder 3, and that is okay because when they get to the application, that just gives them more time to work on all of that stuff. Okay, so we have our calculator is already on. Of course, we can press it again. It doesn't hurt anything. We press our program key. This time we're going to go to edit, and we're going to use our arrow to get to edit, and we're going to select. We only have one program, so we don't have to arrow down. It's there. So now you're back into edit mode. It tells you that the cursor is blinking and that you need to use your arrow keys to move the cursor. And when you use your arrow keys to move around the screen, you can move around it. It doesn't hurt anything to move around it all day long. And then when you press enter, it will take you to the next line, and it will give you your colon again, and that tells you you're ready for your next command. So it also says that when you need to do what I just did, it tells you in the instructions. So there is nothing that I've actually done on the screen that it hasn't told us to do in the instructions somewhere. And the fact that students can go back and forth to look stuff up is the best part about it. So it's not like they lose it. If they're like, okay, I completely forgot how to do such and such, then you can always go back to it. Once again, we're just going to go to Program, and we're going to choose the Input-Output key. And this time it wants us to do the display again. We're going to arrow down and do it. And go on to step 4. Okay, so we're going to have to turn the alpha lock on. And it says, note that the change in the appearance of the cursor, yes, that little flashing A. It tells you to press enter again at the second line to add any more, if you want to add more display statements. Okay, so now here it says you can add as many statements as you like. So it's giving you this text that you can choose to do. And then it talks about running the program again. So we've kind of went over everything. So for the last few minutes of my section, I would like to just take a look at some of the other skill builders so you can see, and I want to show you some of the math on once the students get used to the calculators. And so when you start doing this, you'll notice that it's going to teach them several things. So it starts with the basics, but then we're going to talk about outputs, and it's going to talk about numbers. And this is the 3-5 hello is one of my favorites because, of course, it responds to a grid. So you can't see the grid on the screen, but the grid actually exists. And it's actually talking here that the grid positions using line numbers and column numbers, just like we're used to in math. This time, the upper left corner is line 1, column 1, which is pretty common in coding. That the screen that you're at starts at the top left instead of the bottom left. But this is going to be a 3-5, so it'll actually allow the students to put what they want to put where they want to put it. So when you run it, notice the hello is actually in the middle of the screen. It's not actually to one side because you told it where to put it. So when they go to the application, it's actually going to tell them some things to do. And it's going to say, hey, let's do this border, okay? And it's going to tell them a little more to do, and it tells them some other stuff. And basically, they get a little bit of free time. That's just a simple first unit. When we go on to Unit 2, we start talking about variables. Okay, folks, this is important math stuff. Variables, okay? That's everywhere in math. You're going to use that in coding. So it's actually going to go through and show you how to assign a value to a variable. And this is going to come in very handy. The application on Unit 2 actually has the student write a program that evaluates a formula. So they're automatically using these mathematical formulas, and they're going to actually create programs for. And it gives them a few different equations or formulas, and you can actually hand them your own formula if you want to. But the students can go through this. And, of course, they're so excited because they think they're creating something for the answers or whatever. But this actually helps them to understand how the formula works. When they have to put these into the calculator, they have to understand the math. And this is why it actually allows coding to up the level that your students are working. So, I mean, Unit 1 is, hey, we're having some fun, I'm writing crazy stuff on the calculator. But then when they get into Unit 2, it's starting to build into that math. And then we're also talking about conditional statements. Conditional statements actually still exist. I know a lot, when I taught geometry, there was a whole lot about logic and stuff that my students didn't completely understand, and I spent all my time talking about conditional statements and things like that. Coding actually has those conditional statements also, and for our middle school, it reinforces the greater than, less than, all those kind of things. So as you can see, this coding actually has math in it. So as a computer science teacher, that is one thing that I wanted all my math teachers to understand, and that's how come one of the reasons I was easy to move over to computer science is because all the math that was actually included in coding. It was just amazing that there is so much math. And when I be teaching computer science, a lot of times the students' questions were about the math. I know one is like speed code. A lot of times they'll have the speed code where you have to put in, how far they ran and the time they ran, and then it wants to know how fast they were running. And the kids have to actually write the code with the formulas. Well, the first thing they say is, well, how do I figure that again? And then you have to convert units. And so coding can actually apply to math. And all of this stuff in here actually takes those basic math concepts and throws them in the way that students are motivated to want to learn. They actually don't even know they're learning. They just want to be able to code and solve the problem. So this is what makes it so exciting to me to be able to do all of this coding stuff. And I hope that you enjoy it also. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda now and let her talk about the Inspire portion of this.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, Brenda, you should have the ball.
Okay, let me share my screen. Here it comes. All right, you guys should be able to see the TI Codes website on the left and the calculator on the right. So we're back to the website on the left of exactly where let me scoot to the top here so you can see. We went to the TI Codes page, and we're going to be looking at the Inspire. How is this a little different for the Inspire? So I'll click that. It'll take just a second for it to come up, and the next thing we'll see is something very similar to the 84 page. Here again, we have 10 minutes of code for the Inspire, 10 minutes of code for the Innovator technology, and then we have the Teacher Lounge. So we're going to start today with the 10 minutes of code for the Inspire. You'll notice the page looks very much the same. We have 6 units in this one and end-of-course projects. So we're going to start with the very first Unit 1 Program Basics. So we'll open that program, and it also has 3 skill builders and an application, so that's very similar. The first lesson, we're going to learn about the TI-Nspire CX Basic Program Editor and how to write, store, and run your first program. So our objectives are here, much as Michelle said, if you have to do lesson plans, this will help you to fill in those forms. So we're going to start with step 1. Introduce the program editor. So on the Inspire, we just turn our calculator on, and we're going to start a new document. So we will press on. We get this this menu, and I can get a new document by either pressing 1 or by pressing, let's just do new. Pressing, okay, hang on. My computer has a little bit of a lag. There we go. And we want to add a program editor. Hang on, let me go to the next page. Step 2. Okay, we're going to go to menu. Let me back up just a second. Skill Builder 1, Step 1. My screen jumped just a second there, so I'm going to go back and my so let me point this out. If you're using the teacher software and you're clicking on the computer with your teacher software, it could be a little different than the experience the students are having on the handheld. So just as typing with the 84, I watched Michelle there, you have to hunt for the letters. So here we're going to go through the steps, but be careful. My touchpad is very sensitive. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start our program. So we've done, let me just double check, new. We're going to go to add a program. We're not going to save because it's not my own. I'm going to go to number 9, add a program editor, number 1, new. Now, step 2 says we're going to name it. So our program is going to just be named Hello. It doesn't say that it has to be in all caps. On the 84, you notice everything was in all caps, but this doesn't have to be. So we'll come over and we're going to type our name. So notice our cursor is in the name spot, blinking there. So we're going to say H-E-L-L-O. We're going to leave this as a program and not put it in a library. So the more of the skill builders you go through, you begin to learn what the program, the type is, and how to create libraries and access them. So we'll hit OK. Or you can press Enter. So the next step, your screen should look like the image to the right. The program code belongs inside the program, in this little box. So we're going to be sure that our work is going to show up inside this little box. So it says that, note the single page program editor is a feature of the Nspire CX operating system of 4.5 and beyond. So you'll have to make sure that you check your settings on your operating system to make sure that you have a 4.5 or beyond operating system. So let's click to step 4. So now what do we want it to do? We want this program, we're going to type some code in here, and we want it to display a message. So with your text cursor inside the dotted box in the editor, select Menu. So we're going to come to our Menu button. And here are all the options. They look very similar to the ones you saw in the 84. We'll click on number 6 or the IO, and we're going to select Display, which is number 1. So then the keyword display is pasted here. Now, one of the things that's different between the Nspire and the 84 is once the students get comfortable with the code, they could actually type it in, whereas you cannot do that on the 84. So I wouldn't recommend that at the beginning, especially not Skill Builder 1 right here in this first activity. But you'll find that the students who really understand this do start typing instead of going to the menu. So the next, we're going to type the quotation template by pressing the Control and then the multiplication key. You have to start with the quotations. You cannot type them later. So Control multiply gives me the quotation box. Now, just like in English, one of the things I really like about the coding is it does emphasize some of the grammar and the conventions in writing in an English literature class. Because when I put quotations here, it tells me I want the calculator, the handheld, to say something to the people who run it. And just like in writing, when something's in quotations, it means somebody said this statement. So we're going to have our calculator say, hello world. Now, in order to type that, the shift key is above the 7. If I want it all in capitals, I do control shift. If I want just one letter in capital, I just do shift and H, E, L, L, O. And then notice there's a comma. So the comma is right next to the O, and now a space. Our space bar is at the very bottom beside Z, so I press it, and now I want to capitalize the word world. So I'm going to go back to Shift, W, O, R, L, D. And the cool thing about this is we have punctuation. So the exclamation point is over here beside G. The key beside G gives me a lot of options: a question mark, an exclamation point, dollar signs, degrees, all kinds of things that will help in our coding. So I've got hello world, and I've got it with a closed quotation. So you must type the quotes before typing the text. That is the key thing here. So if a student messes up on this program, it's probably because they forgot to type the quotes. So we'll go to step 7. Before running any program, you must first store the program to memory. To store it, we're going to use our menu key, and so let's do that now. So we'll go to menu, and number 2 is check syntax and store. Then I have several options in that. I can check syntax and store, or I can just check syntax and I can run. Notice the check syntax and store, I can click number 1 and do it, but do you see over here on the far right side, it says Control B. So I can always go through the menu key, but if I'm really good with shortcut keys, Control B is the other way to do that. So I'll demonstrate both of those ways. Now, notice the title changed. Hello, in quotes, is still there, stored successfully. So now I know the program is in there. They checked for syntax errors, and it's stored. So I'm ready to run it. So I have an option for running. So to run the program, press Control R. This is a shortcut for menu, syntax, run. So I want to show you both of those. I can go back. I could always go to menu, and then that check syntax and store. Do you remember where number 3 said run? I could do it that way, or I can just hit Control R. And my screen changed. So now it just says hello, and the cursor is blinking. So in order to, the calculator app opens a new page, and so I'm ready to just press enter to make it run. Ta-da! And there it said, hello world. Now notice it says done at the end of the program in italics, because that tells us that the program has run done everything I asked it to do, and done is the last line, so I know the program is finished. So you've just completed your first coding on the Nspire. One of the things we introduced in our school district, our state test for 8th grade students is the very first week of April, and there's a whole lot of school left after this. So we introduced all 8th graders to a 3-week unit in coding, and this was where we started. So after our teachers would have gone through this program with the students, explaining much like I have with you in front of the class, because they'd never used the calculators for coding. Now, they were whizzes at using the calculator for everything else in 8th grade. So this was a new piece. But then the teachers made a quick assignment and said, okay, I want you guys are in groups, I want you to recreate this program, and I want you to, for it not to say hello world, I want you to say hello to one of your group members. And so to edit this program, you can go back a page by control back arrow, or you can just click the 1.1. And I'm ready to edit. So that's much easier to edit. So I can come up here, move my cursor around, and I can change hello world to hello, and I can type Sue. And then notice the name of my program changed. That stored successfully is gone. I have an asterisk here. The asterisk says, uh-oh, you changed something. Before you can do anything with this, you have to store it again. So we can go back to that menu key, but there's a shortcut. Remember, it is Control B. And Control B checks for syntax error and also store successfully. And now I'm ready to run it. Let's see if it changed. And that shortcut was Control R. And I even just did it myself. I thought, oh wait, it didn't do anything. Oh yes, you have to press Enter to actually make it run. So Control R says, okay, the program is ready. I want it to run, but Enter is what you push to make it actually happen. So that's our first skill builder. Let's take a minute to look at the second skill builder. I will just step through the last step on here, gives you introduction. It says much that you can edit the program and congratulate you on getting finished. Now notice, I don't have to hit the skill builder at the bottom. I can just click, much like a learning management system, you just click next. So in the second skill builder, we're going to use arguments in the program, and we're still going to use the display statement. So let's get started. Why does a program name need parentheses? So we're going to talk about this. The parentheses after a program name are always required, and they allow a program to accept arguments or initial values. There are two forms of arguments: the formal arguments, which are always variables within the parentheses when viewing the program editor, and the actual arguments, which are the values, defined variables or expressions that are entered into the parentheses when you run the program. So we're going to create a new program, and we're going to define A, B, and A and B are going to be our formal arguments for parentheses or parameters. We're going to define them. So we got to name it so that we're ready to, we can add a page. We don't have to go back to a new document. So I'm going to Control, add a page. It's going to be a program editor, a new program editor page, and this time we're going to call it Hypotenuse. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use the keyboard to type that in. It's a little bit faster. It may be too fast for some of you. So I type that in, and I hit OK. So I get the screen, step 4. So we've named it Hypotenuse, and we selected OK or press Enter, and here we are. So this time I want to name some variables. So inside the parentheses, I'm going to move my cursor until it blinks inside the parentheses, and I type A, comma, B. And that's what the instructions say for step number 4. Now, we're going to enter a display statement. Notice this time it does not have quotation marks. So I'm going to come to my little box. It's got the outline around it. And I go to Menu, IO, number 1, Display. And I want to display the formula for finding the hypotenuse. So I'm going to type the square root of, so that is control x squared, and then a squared plus b squared. All right. Now, the students, if you're doing these back-to-back with our 8th graders, one of the common mistakes they made was they went and put the quotations around this, even though it didn't say, because that's what you did last time with the display. So some of them, when they run this program, are actually going to get this formula because they accidentally used the quotation marks. So that's just kind of a heads up when you do this with students. So now I've entered my formula, and I'm ready to run it. But I have to check it first. This little asterisk right here is what tells me I need to check it. So remember, there are 2 ways to do that. I can control, number 2, check syntax, and, that went too fast. But it did store it. That was fast in a blink. So hypotenuse, my program hypotenuse, is stored correctly. I'm ready to run it. Now, I have a little red mark here. Let's just see what happens. So I'm going to hit Control-R to run. And there's the program. But remember, we put an A and a B in there. And so that means I can enter values now. So I'm going to enter the value of 3, 4. And now I'm going to press enter. And then the kids go, ooh, what happened? Why does it say 5, Miss? And they expect to see the formula worked out. So this is what Michelle was talking about, logic for programming, because now the real question is, what in the world did the calculator do? And why did it do that? How did it get 5? And so now the students are verifying the answer to see, oh, well, I wonder, did it stick them in? What happens if I don't do 3, 4, 5? I know that's a Pythagorean triple, so let's try another one. So if I want to run this program again, I can pick the variable key, VAR key, and there are both of my programs. So I'm going to pick hypotenuse again, and this time I'm going to select 2, 7, because we know that that's not going to be a pretty whole number. And so now the students are really wondering what in the world happened, how did it get there, because the calculator did a lot of work behind the scenes. And so a wonderful program to tie together the program, the formulas, the use of formulas, and then justifying what happens there. In fact, some of the students got really good at this, and they felt like they could create a program for every one of the formulas, and then just let the formula do the work after this. And of course, we use them at the end of the year, so that was fine with us. But if I was introducing this along the way, then I would be asking my students to justify the work that the calculator did. So this was Skill Builder 1 and Skill Builder 2. It talks about the shortcut there, but I did want to point out this last sentence on this step. You can also use expressions in the place of numbers, such as the hypotenuse program. I didn't have to type 2, 7. I could have typed 2 times 7, 9 minus 5. So I could put a whole expression in there without even doing the work to find their links in the first place. I did go through this. Step number 7, the way to go back and run a program again is to use the variable key, the VAR key. and you can test your program with a couple different times. Now, here we want to talk about saving. If you use your a classroom set of TI-Nspires, then students, especially when we get to longer programs, they may want to save their programs. And when so let's just look at that. So if I'm going to, I can Control S for save, just like on the computer. Notice I get to pick which folder I would like that to be in, and then I can also name it. So I'm not going to say this one, but if your students are working on a lengthy project, then you might have a first period folder, and maybe they're the same 5 people use this computer every day, so each student could have a folder. But be careful because they can look in each other's folder too. So just something to think about if you choose to save. If students are using their own personal computer or personal handhelds, they certainly can save them, might save some time, or at least then take them home and show their mom and dad all the work they're doing. So Skill Builder 3 has more. It teaches them what a function, instead of a program, what is a function. So it steps into some pretty steep programming right away. This is not a difficult program. It's very much like the one we just did, but it creates it as a function program instead of a program. I'm just going to click through this. I want to show you for 8th grade, the end of this Skill Builder 3 was really tough. And so what we did, one of my groups chose to go ahead and just trudge through from the beginning, from Unit 1, Skill Builder 1, all the way through and do everything with their students. And that was a lot for 8th grade. So what we ended up tweaking for the next year was we went through and picked some of the skill builders in each unit, but not all of them, because 8th graders, this graphing piece is very provides a lot of insight for your GT kids, but we got lost on some of the average students. But the application piece here, I have to scroll down just a little to see the next step. It had some really cool ideas. So it was the difference between a function and a program. We can talk about that. I want to show you the page that we did, this page, your task. So the students, here were some of the formulas that they had used. Now notice 8th grade has not used all of these. And in Texas, we use a different compound interest formula for our testing. But they got out their state formula chart for their state assessment, and each group took a formula on that page, and then they programmed it like Skill Builder 2, and then explained what it did and how they put the formula in. And the students, just like Michelle said, there were so many light bulbs that came on when they had to insert that formula and then figure out how the handheld took these two numbers and got an answer and what the math behind it. So I really encourage you when you're using these to go through them and double check the application pages. You're going to find some really good. You just let the students go with those and go, okay, here's an application. You guys try. I will tell you, a lot of my teachers try very hard to do all the work first before they gave any programming to their students, and it was slow going. The teachers that just said, I don't really know a lot about this, but I know, guys, we want to introduce you to coding, and it built up the coding classes in the high school. We're just going to learn this together. We're just going to work on this together. Those classes got further, and the students leveled themselves. One of my favorite stories was that we had a student who was not very successful in math, had some learning difficulties, and he shined in coding. It just made sense to him. And at the end of the 8th grade coding unit, he told his 8th grade teacher, he said, I didn't think I would ever be able to have a real job, but Miss, I know I can learn coding. I get to grow up, have a job, be independent, and make a living for myself. And I love that story because this opened his eyes that just because math was hard for him, it didn't mean all math was hard for him. And so I was very excited for him. So I'm going to pass it back and see how we've done on questions. Let me see. Let me stop sharing. And I'm going to pass it back to Michael.
Brenda, thanks so much. So I think so far the questions that have been asked, I think they've been answered. But as we begin to wrap things up tonight, if you do have any questions, please try to get those asked. I know both Brenda and Michelle will do their best to get those questions answered. One thing I do want to mention, I don't know if anyone caught it at the beginning of the webinar, but if you're excited about coding, we have a new coding platform that's coming to the TI-Nspire, and that's Python. And so I just want to show real quick, in case anyone's looking to learn more information about that, where you can get more information about an upcoming webinar. So let me share my screen. And so if you're interested, feel free to visit our website, education.ti.com. Find that professional development tab in the middle. Slide down to the bottom to webinars. And now on the left side, you can view the live TQ'd webinars, and you can start to see a list of some of the other additional upcoming webinars we have this fall, with more to come. But next week's includes Python. Also, if again you're liking what you're seeing in this webinar format, you could feel free to visit our on-demand TQ webinars. So that's all of our archived, recorded, free webinars on demand. And so that includes not only recording, but also certificate, as well as the documents that were used for the webinar. So it's a complete package there. To receive a certificate of attendance for tonight, please go ahead and click the link that appeared in the chat window. Also listed is a link for the documents tonight. If those links aren't working for you for any reason, hang tight. You'll automatically get a follow-up email in a couple days. That follow-up email will contain a link to the recording, so you can go through this at your own pace. Link to the certificate, as well as a link for the documents. And if you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. I know many of you are excited about what you learned tonight. Please feel free to continue that excitement and conversation on any of the major social media outlets. If you're in need of any post-webinar follow-up, feel free to give us a call at 1-800-TI-CARES or send us an email, ti-cares@ti.com. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, when you leave the webinar, a brief survey will automatically appear in your browser. Your feedback guides us as we plan future online events, so we really hope you will share your thoughts in that post-webinar survey. Big thanks to Brenda and Michelle for everything you guys shared tonight. Thank you so much. And big thanks to everyone for attending tonight. Thanks for your time, and we hope to see everyone back online next week. Have a great night.